Hello everyone, welcome to our offline Baatein session. I'm Dharani, currently in my undergraduate second year in graphic design, and I'll be the host for the day. So today we have with us Debjani Mukherjee. Debjani is an independent animation filmmaker, author, illustrator, researcher and educator. She is presently the coordinator in design thinking at Pathways World School, an IB boarding school in India where she designs the curriculum for design thinking. She has a PhD from IDC School of Design, IIT Bombay, on the topic Indigenous Art Pedagogy. Previously, she was the HOD of the Department of Animation and Motion Graphics at UIT Ahmedabad. She graduated from NID Ahmedabad in 2009. She is also the co-founder of BOL, the Language of Children, a non-profit organization based in India, contributing towards community filmmaking and engaging community youth to share their own stories through the powerful medium of art. Her research interests include animation, documentary, collaborative filmmaking, writing, designing books for children, and indigenous art pedagogy. Debjani, welcome to our Baatein session. Starting off with, how did your journey into animation and NID pan out, especially experimental animation?
So first of all, I'm so happy and a little bit nervous sitting here on this side of the auditorium. To start from the very beginning, I always wanted to come to NID doing animation filmmaking. And at that time, you would all know it was a diploma program. So my parents were like, at least be a graduate and then do whatever. So I finished my graduation in Ecostat Maths, and then during that time I bunked my college a lot, and I happened to do some online reading, visit libraries, watch films, peep into other film studies classes, and then made a film, a short animation film, all on my own. And that was the only portfolio I had during my interview at NID. And so when I joined here, coming from a small town, I was very, very shy and not at all confident, and I used to be very scared, just as a person to explore. And because I always felt I'm not good enough in drawing, painting, because I was a self-taught person. I had no background. I never attended design school or a film school or art college. So when I came here, thanks to all the fantastic faculty here, they easily kind of pushed me into experimental animation. And during these 2 years, I explored all the different art forms. Basically stop motion, because it was that space that I felt comfortable. And it was very forgiving medium that way. Nobody would judge in stop motion animation, and I could play around. So right from paint and glass, sand animation with Isabel, then cut out, also like playing with some glycerine and paints, whatever. It was a lot of fun doing that.
Yeah, that's great. So we can screen the Dream of the Carpet film?
Yeah. So this was a collaborative project.
So after your days in NID, can you talk about how BOL was established and also introduce the audience to BOL?
So after I graduated, like I said, I was only working, and in the evenings also I used to spend a lot of time collaborating with my seniors, juniors, to do a little bit more exploration. It just passed, it just got over these 2.5 years. And then I didn't want it to literally get over, and I didn't want to immediately get into production, join a production house that time. So I thought I'll take a break and just travel. And at that time, coincidentally, a friend of mine offered to come and stay in a village for around a month, and during that time maybe do a couple of workshops with the children there. So we happened to go there, me along with my husband, who is a musician, sound designer. So at that time, both of us went there. We stayed there for a month or so. And then slowly we start developing these modules where basically the children would first be child reporters. They will go around, document the real challenges of that village. Other group of children would explore their indigenous art forms, their music, their folk tales, and then together we would make these stop motion animation films. So so first time it was like, okay, one vacation, work come vacation, second couple of things again followed to other places. So so I'll give you little stories. So the first one was in Nimkheda, where it is in Madhya Pradesh, and a very small place, and the only production there was sesame seeds, and it was very dry, and so the children, they made a film on deforestation using sesame seeds. The next one, we went to Rapad again. Yeah, you can see a couple of pictures there. Rapad will be on top. Where you've been to Rajasthan, they have the wand and the circular houses, and they do the mirror work. So again, picked up a local concept because their children are not sent to school. So the children made a music video to convince their parents to send the girl child to school. Again, made with these glass pieces and mud work. So we kept traveling, and after a couple of projects, this became really interesting. So another place, this was in sponsorship with CRY, in Jharkhand, in Jharkhand, there's this place where there was no school in that village, and the children had to walk around 2 hours in summer to go to school. And so the traditional art form in Jharkhand was painting on the wall. Yeah? So the children actually drew, I don't have this picture here, such a nice one, where they made a school, not this one, this is in Nimkheda, where they made a school in that village, and then CRY raised, showed that film and raised money as a fundraiser, and today that village has a school. So slowly we started seeing that positive change could come, and these films were actually, they had a voice and they were making an impact on social change. So then we formed Whole, and we continued to do the work. We made around 18 to 20 films traveling all over India, very small places, and also at the same time exploring inclusive education, mixing the general, these international school children along with NGO students together doing it. We did a campaign in Delhi called on traffic control, basically, where students collaborated. Also, 5-year-old to 16-year-old children came up together to work on different aspects. They formed group naturally, and yeah, a lot of interesting work happened. A lot of learning, a lot of failure, a lot of experimentation.
Can you also talk about your experience in Myanmar, specifically?
Yes. So before that, so what happened, these films, we collated it together and we sent it to various international festivals, and that is how we also did some international kind of collaborative filmmaking workshops. And we traveled to, say, Egypt, to Russia, Siberia, this is in South Korea, these kind of films. And there they happened. So this project in Myanmar came where Lindsay, the founder of an NGO called Yangon Film School in Myanmar, she approached, where the task was to actually make animated documentaries, where the audio, of course, the documentaries were, the first project was on gender-based violence. And these were stories that could not be told in live action or in any other medium. And they were very important stories, and they had to be shown to the public. So that is how I happened to go to Myanmar. And again, we explored textiles to sand, animation, to their own traditional puppets that they use. So this is a picture from the museum where we did research, initial research, identified various medium. So another interesting thing about this project was we had just 12 students, and we insisted that none of them, they had any art or filmmaking background. And this was a 3-month project where we stayed there together at one school campus, and we went through this entire journey of filmmaking.
So we can see the film Limbo.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this was made by the 12 children that she's also.
So these children had different backgrounds. Some were carpenters, some were audio recordists, some were but none into drawing, painting. Some were poets also. So it was a very interesting group that we formed. And this was the first of the series.
So I think you did 2 projects in Myanmar. This was the first one, and
Actually, 4 every year we did these projects, and for 3 months I used to be like going there and living there with the community making the films. So these films were also like real stories. So the students, they traveled to these IDP camps, and through ethnographic filmmaking we also trained them how to do these audio recordings. They recorded the audio and then we made the film.
so we'll see one more film
Yes,
from the
yeah.
same
From
place?
the next series,
Yeah.
I think on stories of friendship.
So good, like just the way you experiment with mediums, and just to imagine the 12 people who've never been exposed to design making something like this, just so great. So you also did your PhD in Indigenous Art Pedagogy from IIT Bombay. So what made you specifically choose that area for your PhD, and how did the learnings translate into the work that you do now?
So by this time I was already working with communities, and I was simply fascinated by the fact that India, in every single kind of, you move 200 kilometers, you meet another person with a different color, with a different taste of food, different art form, different music, different language, and this goes on. And you know what also happened when I was working with these children, and I used to ask them, like, this is fantastic, how did you learn this? So they would say, you, he. And that got me thinking that how can teaching be so organic and so simple that the learners, they don't even feel that they are being taught. So, and that was my first, research question, that I thought that I'll actually find out this traditional or this, ancestral way of learning. And it's beyond apprenticeship, that was my first starting point. It took a long 6.5-year journey doing this with IIT, but I've enjoyed every single stage of it. And I worked with the Bhil artist community of Bhopal, and very closely with Bhuri Bai, and just last year she got the Padma Shri for arts. So we made a book together, again a very collaborative process, working together. She taught me how to, the way I was doing my initial interviews is like ethnography, yeah? You go there, stay, you observe, do participatory observation, and you ask questions. But it was very difficult for my artist to actually articulate everything in words, because this was essentially a very non-verbal medium, so then I decided, after 2 years of doing this, that I became her student. And this completely changed the hierarchy, because when we travel to these indigenous communities, we're always this, fair person coming from an urban context, speaking English, and we come with a lot of baggage. And this concept of fly on the wall or lizard on the wall is very redundant, I feel, in today's context. So when you become a learner, you change the hierarchy in a way that they also open up to you in many ways. And what I did was, while I was learning along with her grandchildren, I started documenting her process of teaching. And this is also how we came up with the book together. She taught me teaching, I taught her computer. And at the end, she gave me these expert ideas how to ease the work. She'll be like, okay, ek ant aap isko duplicate kar do. And she'll very interestingly, she'll come up, she understood Photoshop like anything. So yes, this was a collaborative book that we came, and we're also working on an animated documentary film together.
Also talking about animated documentary as a medium, why were you attracted to it, and why do you think it suits so well?
Like I said, I found it's extremely powerful, and it is, because there are documentaries, fantastic documentaries being made, but there are certain issues that has its boundaries, and it cannot be, shared in this, in the live action medium. Of course, you have to keep anonymity in many cases in mind. Also this way of, how you experience something, and how you are kind of showing it. So I felt animation gave me that a medium where I could actually symbolize a lot of things. You know, so for example, if you find spaces where, like the apple, you know, where it was chopped off, so that could translate into very symbolic meanings. A string, somebody trying to open it, untangle it, it could also show a very disturbed mind. So the use of symbolism, the way I could translate and play with time and space at the same time, and also it being a very, you know, I felt it gave purpose to my animation. It was a very powerful social tool, and the kind of work kept happening, kept coming to me, also led me to explore this medium more.
You also must have gone through such intense, diverse experiences while you were working with people in Myanmar as well. So how did that translate, and what are your experiences from that?
Like you said, like you saw, these content were very like dark at that time, and I had just given birth. The first film when I was working on gender-based violence, I was there with my mother and my 3-month-old daughter, and we were staying in this kind of same platform, and we converted one classroom into a nursery, and it was a fantastic experience. But what also happened is listening to these kind of stories, very real stories, and doing multiple edits, it kind of stayed back. And even after I returned to India, I had to take it out of my system. And that is when early pandemic hit, and so I put it out on social media, requesting people to share their stories. And I was surprised there were so many people who got back with anonymous audio recordings of themselves. And some of them also willingly agreed to share their names. And that is when, you know, I made another film. Again, a very experimental. I'm just trying. I don't know if it's how well it has come out, because I had tried to do a mixed medium. Painted an actress. Maybe you can show that poster, Awakening of the Goddess. Yeah. And this was initially planned to be as a projection in an exhibition, art exhibition. You can show a small trailer of that. So I'll give that to NID again. You know, it definitely taught me to be a designer. So, but it also taught me to be open to things which are not planned in life. So things kept coming to me in a certain way, and I tried to design it to the perfect way that I could. So animated documentary definitely happened to me.
So I was really curious about the medium choices you make. Like, they're so diverse and you experiment so much. So how do you decide what medium you use for what kind of content? And also, when you were trying to collaborate with the 12 people, there must be so many challenges because there are 12 people working on it, and the different places, yeah. And the overall language of the film looks so uniform. So how did you do that?
So the language of the film was of course one, and again it's like, you know, there are smaller ethnic communities, and each of them, they have their own language. So actually each of these films were also redubbed in 4 or 5 their ethnic languages. But coming to that question is, you know, there were of course challenges, 12 people coming from various different places. Just like your own classrooms, you know, like our classroom. That's the beauty of NID, by the way. So what also happened is, with the challenges, we had so many stories coming from different places, so many mediums, so many kind of, how do you say, narrative structures. And that simply fascinated everyone, not just me. So what we also did is, once we had the audio in place, we listened to it a couple of times, and based on that we made the storyboard. And while we were doing the storyboard, we were very conscious, as if what was it whispering to our ears. You know, we have never decided on a medium and then chose the audio. Okay, we were very mindful about what is the story telling us. Does it require a certain kind of symbolism? And if those symbolism are coming out, then what would be the best medium to showcase it? And as you see, we've not been restrictive to one specific medium, but we've mixed and matched. You know, we went with the flow. So it was an organic process throughout. You know, and often it is that, mostly it was the story that guided us to where to take it forward. And also, when we were doing the storybooks, we used to pin it up on the walls, and we used to go to and fro. While we were animating, we didn't get restricted to the storyboard. We followed it 80-90%. Some things that, you know, it just happens there at the moment. So yeah, that's it.
Did you also have the opportunity to show any of your films to the locals there, and
So
what
that
was their
was,
reaction?
good you reminded. We have to put those things up. So once we made the films, we actually put it up in open communities, and that we did in India also. So we would put up these projectors on the open fields, and with the wind they would often go flapping with very bad sound system, but it served the purpose, and the children would themselves come together and talk about the process of filmmaking. So that was, I felt, beyond them sharing their process, but more like their concerns about improving that space. So similarly, in Myanmar also, we had these open grounds with thousands of people, and we simply, projected these films. And another thing was, since we had this in mind for open projection, we had to be very mindful about how we edited these audio documentaries. If you note, we got hours of recordings, 3-4 hours almost, and we had to be very mindful what we kept, what was the flow, not highlighting a certain political group or certain people. Sometimes, they would have named, but we had to edit it accordingly to keep their security in mind. There was also one film where we had kept it anonymous, and we went back to the contributor and showed these films, especially for the films on gender-based violence. And there was one woman who was also a victim, and then she turned into an activist. And after she saw the film, she actually insisted on giving out her name, because she too used that film as a tool to kind of help other people talk about their stories. So yes, and it went beyond that classroom, beyond that space.
It's just so inspiring how you appropriate art to just make these social changes, and just the reaction of the people. This was awesome to have you here, and such an insightful session. And thank you everyone for showing up. And yeah,
Thank you so much.